Well, we don't have our sunny sky today, but at least it's still warm. Okay, well, I thought at this point it would be to my benefit to go ahead and put the radiator hose back on down there and fill this up with water and see if there's any leaks, because if there's going to be leaks, I want it to be when I can deal with it with all this stuff off the front of the engine. So far it looks good, at least with it sitting here. I don't see any water leakage, any coolant leakage at all. So just the only thing that's a real booger on this thing is to get this water outlet put back on, because like I said, that's a heater hose pipe or something back there, some kind of bypass, that thing there, and it just kind of sticks in there with it's got its O-ring in there, and I think that's kind of a hokey arrangement, but I guess it works. It worked for 200,000 miles, so I'm not going to second guess them. So just that's kind of an ordeal to do that. But anyway, it's looking good so far. I think I'm going to have to have a radiator cap though. I think this cap is no good anymore, because there's something something is not right about this. I think it's supposed to have, not sure if it may be okay. May just be my imagination. It looked kind of weird, like it's supposed to. Maybe it is okay. I don't know. I'll look into that further. It looked kind of strange down in there. Like I said, I think this car has definitely had at least a couple overheating episodes. But move on from that. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go to the next stage, which is to start getting ready and put this timing belt back on. And first thing I'll have to do, I'm going to have to get my nemesis out of the way, which is this power steering pump, get it positioned back in there. I'm not going to put it on right now, but I'm going to go ahead and get so I can get to the belt and deal with that now. First thing it is, make sure and put this bracket back on for the alternator. It's a 14mm bolt right there. I just barely snugged it for right now. When you get ready to put the belt on and get it adjusted, you can tighten it down all the way. Okay, what we got to do in this next step, we're going to put the crankshaft timing gear on. That's this. It's just a slit fit. Notice that there's a slot in it. There's a matching slot here. That's a keyway on the crankshaft. So what you do is just slip that on like that, and then you have a little small key that you had, and you're just going to slip that in here. Sometimes it goes in easy and sometimes it doesn't. If it's on camera, it won't ever go in easy. It actually just slips in there, like so. Just push that in. Now this keyway tapers at the back, so don't get caught up thinking that this has to, that this thing has to be pounded all the way in. It does not. It's going to stick out a little bit. When the crank pulley for the belts is on, and the bolt holds that in, so you don't have to worry about it coming out. So let's do that. And you have to have this in here, because this thing, when you go to put the timing belt on, you have to, otherwise this pulley here will spin and you won't actually be at top dead center. And notice, I don't know if you can see that or not, but you see the scallop, that's the top dead center mark on that pulley. You notice how that lines up with the keyway. So yeah, that's what we're going to do with that, and go from there. Okay, time now we're going to put on our idler and our tensioner pulleys, and these are the new ones, and I noticed that those have just a little bit of protective oil film on them. We don't want that on there, because that's going to get on the timing belt. We don't want that on a rubber timing belt. So what we do is we just take our bit of brake cleaner, put on a clean piece of tissue, paper towel, whatever, and just kind of go around the outside the roller surface there and get that off of there. Make sure you're not wearing greasy gloves or anything either. So we got off there a little bit of what was on there. So you don't want to spray it down in there, because you got a sealed bearing, which sometimes ain't so sealed. So you get the grease messed up in it. Make sure your surface you're on is not too much nastiness there. do it. Okay, so I've got my idler put in, bolted on right there. That just goes right on the right side there. And then back here I have my tensioner. Now this is a step that on the face of it may seem a little bit confusing, but don't let it confuse you. What we're doing here at this step is you have the tensioner there. That's your tensioner, and it's got the bolt that holds it on, and then there's a, I can get in here too, I'll show you the way this tensioner, if you can see that, it's slided, so it slides on that bolt. It slides from front to rear. And then you have your spring here. This is your tensioner set spring. So the way this works is, if that'll focus eventually, there it is. The tensioner set spring just hooks around that small pin there, and then you have a cover on it. The closed side of the cover goes this way, that way, to the right side there. And then you hook the other side onto this arm on the tensioner. So the way this thing works is, what you're going to do when you get the belt on is you, that spring, that's the preload spring for the timing belt tension, and I'll show you how that's going to work. But what we're going to do right now initially is you want to put that all together like you see it, and then you want to push that, just use your finger and push that tensioner with the bolt a little bit loose. You want to push that tensioner back that way, means going that way as far as it'll go, and snug it down a little bit. You want to get it, you know, out of the way of the belt right now. So it'll make sense in a minute, but I know it may not right now, but that's what you do at this step. Okay, well, I'll tell you right away, this timing belt job is not as easy as it is on the 1.8 and the 2.0 liter engines. This one's got some steps in it that are kind of unusual, and this is one of them. We're getting ready to go ahead and put on our timing belt, and to do that we've got to set the crankshaft at top dead center, and we've got to make sure our camshaft pulleys are at top dead center. So in other words, get all the timing marks ready to be, you know, get them lined up. So the way this thing is, it's just the way they designed it, this bolt, it looks like you could just go right in there with that thing and tighten it down and turn the crank that way. Well, they tell you not to do that for whatever reason. What you have to do is, I'm not making this up either, you have to take this pulley apart. This is a crank pulley, and this part back here is called the I don't know if this is one or two pieces I'm looking at here. I can tell you in just a minute, but looks like there's, I guess that's two pieces. I know y'all can't see anything, I'm just trying to get it up to my face there, but anyway, this thing in here is called the pulley boss, and it's got these 4 bolts on it, and they tell you to take this thing out and use this as your washer, put it on the crankshaft to turn the crank with. So I don't like doing that, but that's what they say do. So hopefully, it looks like it's got a locator pin in there that you can't get it screwed up. They're pretty good, usually pretty good about that. So that looks like that'll be a 10mm bolt head there. So let's go ahead and take these 4 bolts out and get this thing separated. Okay, I'll show you what I'm doing to get this off here. I'll get the camera to sit up there. Maybe it'll be in frame. These are not in there that tight, but you got a reluctor wheel back here. That's for the crank trigger. So, I don't know what that is. Looks like a timing belt. Must have broke at one point too. So these are not in here that tight, but you want to make sure that you don't bend that thing up. So I've got plenty of pad back here, and all I'm doing is I'm just kind of getting that on there. Then a few taps with this. Come loose. This is uncharted territory, isn't it? Heard of having to do this before. Whatever. At least I hadn't had to use a P-U-L-L-E-R or a P-R-E-S-S on this. I'm afraid to say the actual word because I'll jinx it. Something's loose in there. Alright, there we go. Oh, this is a good thing I took this apart. Remainder of a timing belt in there. Okay, looks like we got 3 different pieces here, so keep these things in order. It's really not hard to frig this up anyway, but just be sure you put it back like it was. I always got a wheel and then this. So just put that to the side. And then this is your reluctor. This is your pulley boss, and that's what's going to go up on the thing here. So let's take a look at that. It's going to do what they say it's supposed to do here. Okay, according to the manual, you're supposed to be able to put this thing on here. Like so. Yeah, I guess that's it. And then use that to turn the crank with. So I guess you're gonna have to run our thing there. I guess you're gonna have to put your. You're gonna have to look for your TDC mark at the top of there. Hope so. Alright, well, whoops. I can't see much there. Okay, well, let me do that and I'll follow up on it. Alright, well, I filmed a clip just a while ago of taking this pulley apart. The service manual, the online Mazda service manual, which I will give you a link to, tells you to take this apart and use this to turn the crank with to get your timing marks lined up. And I found that for me personally that was a totally unsatisfactory way to do it, because there's your timing mark back there. You see it's lined up, and when you put this thing in here, you can't see the timing mark. You have to keep going up, you know, upstairs up there and look down to find the time mark. I think that's totally ridiculous. So you know, you do have a peg here, but still it's hiding the time mark, so that didn't work for me. So here's what I did. I just went and got myself a small, I had them on hand, stack of washers here, and I made sure the car was out of gear, and then I just used that to put the bolt in and turn the crank with, and the engine turns easily. It's got a little bit of compression, you know, on a compression stroke, but it's easily turned. So there it is. I got that mark lined up. So now we can begin the battle of getting all these marks lined up. So now let's go up to the crank camshaft pulleys and get those set. Okay, here we go. Now, this is a step that a lot of people tend to overthink a little bit on these 4-cylinder engines, and it's a lot more simple to do than you would think it is. But it really, take my word for it, it's quite simple. We're going to put the timing belt on, and obviously we have a crank pulley down there, which you looked at in the last clip, and then we have the 2 cam pulleys. Now Mazda makes it really easy on these cam pulleys to know how to time the engine. As I explained several times, you've got two pulleys, and then you have the 2 marks. Now there's the 2 marks right there. There's the E is facing up for the exhaust pulley, the I is facing up for the intake. So now eyeballing these, they look pretty close, but I think they're both pointing down so a little bit, so I'm going to adjust those a little bit, and we're going to start putting our belt on. But what you want to do is you want to put the crank at top dead center and put these where they're supposed to be at their top dead center marks, and they face in. Now the thing is, what people, like I said, people tend to overthink on this. They think that the crank has to be turned like so many turns as opposed to this. It does not. Okay, the crank, when it's on top dead center, it's on top dead center regardless. It doesn't make any difference how many times you turn that crank. Once that mark lines up down there, it is on top dead center. So you don't worry about that. When it's done, when you're done down there, you're done. You worry about these up here. Like I said, you might have to, you might have to figure around with these a little bit to get them exactly right, because you can put because you have some, lifters put some tension on these, so sometimes you gotta kind of mess with it. You may actually have to, go around and put the belt on, let the tension off, put the tension on it and turn it, and you'll find that the marks are not lined up. So you might have to do it a couple times. I have to do it 3 times. It does not matter. You do it just as many times as you need to do it to get them lined up. But that's what you do. So should be pretty simple, and I'll post in here somewhere in this, I'll clip in that photograph of the timing marks again for you. Okay then, time to put the belt on. Timing belt, sometimes I have an arrow right here. That means you put it on, the arrow faces the direction of engine rotation. Most engines turn clockwise, righty to the right. And some Hondas run backwards, so be sure you know which is which. So anyway, the order on this, to put this on, is crank pulley's number 1, and around here number 2, around this exhaust pulley number 3, around the intake pulley number 4, around the tensioner number 5. That's the order that you put the belt on. So let's get at it. Okay, I'm here too. This is not easy to do that, to get all those lined up, but I think we're good to go. Your TDC marks should face each other levelly. They should be in line with the seam of the cam journal cap back there, which we saw earlier. E should be straight up, I should be straight up. So that looks pretty good. Down here, I kept having a problem with the crankshaft trying to move on me, so I had to rig up a way to block it from turning. You can put it in gear, but there's still got some slack in it and your mark will get off there. So that looks pretty good. I know it's it's slightly to one side, but that's okay. It's not a tooth off. So what we're gonna do now is we've got our tensioner tightened out of the way there. So what we're going to do is, the next step is you go ahead and put your wrench back on here, and you're going to loosen this tensioner and let the spring take up the slack on it, like so. And then you're going to turn the engine over clockwise 2 full turns and make sure that your belt is good and tight. I mean, it's tracking okay, and that your marks are lined back up. Because what's going to happen is, your camshaft turns half the speed of the crank. So if you just turn it 1 turn, you're going to look and your marks are going to be outside. They're going to be 1 here and 1 here. So that ain't going to work. So you got to do 2 full turns with it. So just go down here, get your ratchet set up, and take it out of gear. Make sure it's out of gear, and turn it 2 times and check your marks. Okay, before you do your 2 turns there, I suggest you put that pulley boss back on and use that instead of my washers, because you can turn in the crank and the camshaft both, so you got a little bit more pressure on that. So be sure you do that. Okay then, went around 2 times, and I know it'll be hard to see probably, but I had to put that thing back on down there. But let me see if that'll focus. Alright, there's your notch in your crank. Let's see if I can shine a light on that a little bit. Okay, if you can see that down in there. Notch and your arrow line up, and then we look at our cam sprockets, and both our marks are facing each other. E straight up, I straight up. should be good to go. Okay, once you went around 2 times and checked your marks, you want to go a little bit further with this. You want to go a little bit clockwise so you got, there's a little bit of pressure from the crank through the timing belt, if that makes any sense. And then what you're going to do is, since this is not a spring-loaded tensioner in the effect, I don't want you to get confused on that, to think that it runs on spring pressure all the time. It does not. That's just a preload. And what its purpose is, it automatically sets the preload on that, but it does not keep, you don't leave it spring tension all the time. So what we did was we went around and we made sure that there's, like I just said, make sure the cam is turning the timing belt, the way it would normally operate. And once it is, you're just going to take your ratchet or wrench, whatever you want to use, and then you're going to tighten this tensioner down. I have an old ratchet and I can't, there we go. You're going to lock this tensioner down. So, there you go. And that should automatically have tension your timing belt. So, it's a real neat little setup, the way it works. Okay then, so now we are ready to unfortunately, we're going to have to take that pulley thing off one more time again. It shouldn't be too hard to get back off there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in 5th gear and just go ahead and pull it back off and reassemble that pulley. And then at that point, we're going to be ready to put our covers back on, our timing belt covers. So we'll do that. Okay, next I went ahead and put that power steering pump back on. And before you put you don't have to take that pivot bolt out. I did by accident, but don't take that out. So that one right here, it's not necessary to do that. So just be sure you put that back in before you put the pump back on the engine, because you can't get it back in because of this frame right here if you don't. Okay, well, the next thing I did is I put that mount back on that goes on the engine itself. It's part of the rest of that mount, goes over here. We're not going to put that on right now because that's just going to get in the way if we do, but we'll go ahead and put that part on because that's actually, that there sits behind the cover, so we'll do that now. Alright, I'm going to put the lower cover on now, timing belt cover. And just goes right here, and it looks at first like you're not going to be able to get this part right there around the dipstick tube, but you just slide it up past that dipstick tube and then bring it down and it'll slide back into place. And one thing is to be sure that you don't mix up the bolts, because I did. Way all the way down to there, because the ones that go, you got 4 that go in the upper timing cover, and then you have, I take my bike, ride my bike, I get a lot of exercise. I throw my bike off the edge. And then, alright, anyway, what I was saying is the ones for the upper cover are longer than the lower ones. See that? So, right it is. So I'm going to take these back and clean them up before I put those in there. I'll tell you something. I grew up here, lived here my whole life. Nice. Idiot kid over just threw garbage in the thing. Anyway, I grew up over here and in Gunnersville, just down the road, and people live here now in Huntsville. They don't sound anything like they used to. They're beating up over there. Idiots. Why you leave like this on the side? Put on the dry area. There you go. There you go. Punk kids for you. guys. Got a second cover right here, goes up. It's got bolt goes through right there, which is missing. I don't know where it is. It wasn't on there. And then there's one down, sort of down in the back right there. Just have to look for it. You'll see it when you put the cover on. Let's go ahead and put that on. Be glad you did it. Now it's time to put the other upper cover on right here. So use those 4 longer bolts I was telling you about earlier. Alright then, we're going to get ready and prep this valve cover in order to put a new gasket on it and put it back on the engine. So, some points to know about this. This is a one-piece neoprene, silicone, whatever you want to call this kind of rubber seal here, which means that, and I can't say this enough, you already see that there's evidence of blue glue and orange glue on here. It's not supposed to be there. These gaskets, the way they work is they don't use sealer except as noted. Now what does as noted means? On this one, you're supposed to put 2, I'll show you the diagram. You'll see it probably right before or right after this clip. You're going to put 2 small strips of sealant right here. Now you see there's already some on there. That's cured. So I'm going to cut that out, that part just right here. I'm going to cut that out and cut this one out because it's dry and it won't seal up now. But that's from a previous, what I was on that other thing I was doing. So I'm going to redo that. When I get ready to put that cover on, I'm going to put a new bead right there. That's where the diagram shows you. Now over here, you see it says 2 strips on that diagram. What that means is, that means you need, these are called cam plugs. One large one here, one small one back here. These you need to reseal if they appear like they're loose or you see them leaking. Now this one is tight. It's good and sealed up, so I'm not going to mess with it. This one back here, it just almost literally fell out. I just lifted it right out, so all the sealer was come apart on it. So we're just going to use the same kind of sealer we've been using and put another coating under it right here. Just tap it back in place right there like it goes, but you don't use any other sealer. Shut up, dog. People are dog addicts around here. Noise addicts, or noise addicts, or noise. So anyway, you simply, that's the only time you use any kind of sealer on this gasket. You do not seal the gasket to the valve cover. You don't seal the gasket to the head. It just pulls out. Just pull this thing out like so. Mom wants you to come home. On the green legs, whatever you're saying. Ain't no way. I have a new one in the house I'll put in here. See, that's all there is to that part of it. And then you just pull this out. Pull this out. I heard that kid say shit. Well, your parents are some good ones these days. So this is what you'll have left, and you don't have to go too nuts cleaning this up. Just clear the grooves out, make sure they're clear. Get anything like that you want to get out of the way. Pick that out, all that stuff. That's what I'm going to do. And then you drop your new gasket in dry. You put your 2 little end seal strips I told you about in, and you will be ready to put the cover back on. And remember, the cover does not have to be torqued down. It probably takes about 5 foot-pounds of torque, 4 or 5 foot-pounds of torque on those bolts at the most. Just tighten them snugly and evenly. Okay, helps when you turn the camera on. Anyway, I was showing you, putting this gasket in. This is a one-piece gasket. Like I said, it goes in dry. You just put the thing in where the way it matches up. It's almost impossible to do this wrong. So you just simply push it into the place with a little channel all the way. Just make sure when you get done that it's in evenly, no high places, and you're good to go. You don't put any sealer on it. I'm just about to show you where the sealer goes that you use this, but I don't care if any and every 350 working on 350 fiber in your body says you need to sealer that thing up with some blue glue. Don't, because you only put some right here and you only put some right here. I replaced that. I cut the old that I had on there before out to redo that, and I sealed up that cam plug and dropped it back in place. That's all you do to that. Don't gobber this thing up with sealer. You saw how it was before. That's wrong. That's right out of the service manual, factory service manual. That's wrong. So these gaskets go in dry. Welcome to the 21st century. All right, once you get that done, you're ready to drop it back on there, and just torque your bolts down to about 3 or 4 or 5 foot-pounds of torque at the most. That's just snug. It's not tight. It's just snug. These things seal very well because they don't warp. See ya. Okay, next put the crank pulley on and tighten that bolt up. You see I got my special torque application arrangement here. What I had to do is I had to put the car in fifth, and then I had to brace this wheel over. Well, it's not the wheel, it's the hub, but see what I'm talking about anyway. Brace that to keep it from turning. And then I got my tutor bar on it, and I leaned about my full weight on this because you need to get it probably between 180 and 200 foot-pounds of torque on that bolt. You don't want it coming loose. So do that now. Okay, then go ahead and put on the water pump pulley, 3 bolts there. Probably go ahead and just wait till you get the belts on and tight, and then you can tighten those bolts up. It'd be a little bit easier to get them snugged up without the thing turning. So you can do it that way if you wish. Alrighty then, put your belts back on. Remember, you got an alternator belt going back that way. You got the adjuster right there, which is that long threaded bolt. Leave that one there loose, and you thread that one in to tighten the belt up. So once you get it, you know, where it needs to be tight, not banjo tight, but just snug tight, you lock that bolt there down, and then don't forget there's a 14 on the bottom pivot of the alternator. You got to reach your hand around back here and get to it on the bottom, just snug it back down too. And then if you didn't do it in the earlier step, you've got a bolt right there, right in there, that's the bracket bolt right there for that whole bracket. Just be sure it's tight. And power steering is supposed to have, you got the pivot bolt here, which you need to leave a little bit loose till you get the adjuster tightened up. Now my car is missing the adjuster for some reason, so anyway, I got to go get that from the junkyard and put that in. So I just kind of picked up on my power steering pump and got the belt fairly tight. It'll do for testing purposes, but I need to get that adjuster put on there. So now what you need to do is go back and tighten these water pump pulley bolts. There are those 3 there. Don't forget to do that. Okay, put the motor mount back on. It's right there like that. Don't forget that ground that goes on there. Now that. Okay then, well, it's got time to get this back together. We just got it all buttoned back up. Simply a matter of just go ahead and put in your cam position sensor, bolt that down, and you got a couple wiring harnesses you need to connect. Just recall right down here, this one's for the cam, that's for probably the oxygen sensor. And then just went ahead and put on the ignition coils. Just refer back to your picture or look back through the first part of the video, first segment, to see how those go. But it's pretty easy. This coil runs that plug, this coil runs that plug, and then they sit in here. You know, you may want to, it doesn't really matter, they're the same, but you know, that's how they wire up. So if you want to be particular about that, I would suggest it. And connect your vent tube back up there. And so now I've got to do an oil change. I hadn't put the cruise back where it goes yet because I want to be able to get my hand down in there. You don't normally have to do that. Plus, got a bunch of goop back there I want to clean off the firewall, and then it'll be time to turn the key and see what happens. Okay then, got my oil changed, wheel back on the ground, battery back on, battery coat back on. So I guess it's time to turn the key and see what happens, or possibly what doesn't happen. Well, it's been dog fever here today. You know, I never realized when I stay here, I'm on vacation this week, when I stay here all day, how much traffic and dogs barking there is. Yeah, here we go. sometimes those timing belts will make just a little bit of noise when you first run them. I hear that one just make just a little bit, but that'll probably quiet down. So good. All right. Okay, well, I'm gonna move this thing so I can clean my driveway, so. All right, job well done. Hope you guys enjoyed and got something from this. Ask any questions you need to. Thanks for watching. Bye.